He collapsed in front of the church, blood soaking through his shirt, and with his last strength he shouted my name. I had no idea why a dying cowboy knew me, let alone why he begged for me. The town square froze. It was Sunday evening. Bells still echoing. Folks came out in their best clothes. Children hushed at their mothers' skirts. His horse stood trembling, steam rising off its flanks, the reins dragging in the dirt. I could hear the flies buzzing over the blood already pooling beneath him. I was no one important, just the school teacher, daughter of a failed farmer, barely keeping a roof over my head. I still had chalk dust on my fingers, a stack of ungraded papers in my satchel. Yet every pair of eyes turned to me when he whispered again, "Bring her." The sheriff pushed past, kneeling beside the cowboy. "Who shot you?" he demanded, pressing a cloth to the wound. The man's lips quivered, but he didn't answer that. Instead, his eyes locked on mine. "You said it once," he croaked, "when you were little." His hand trembled upward, reaching toward me. "Never forgot." My stomach tightened. A memory, a sentence. What could I have said as a child that tied me to this stranger? The crowd shifted, murmurs starting. "Why her? What's she got to do with him?" "Teacher, don't know a thing about that man." Their whispers cut sharper than the evening wind. The cowboy coughed hard, blood flecking his lips. Then, through the pain, he forced out the words that silenced the whole town. "Everything mine belongs to her." The sheriff froze. Reverend Price crossed himself. Someone dropped their hat. The man wasn't just another drifter, he was Samuel Cutter, owner of 3 ranches, 2 herds, and more land than anyone this side of the river. His fortune was legendary, his enemies plenty, and now, with the town gathered, he gave it all to me. I stood there, unable to move. I hadn't earned it. I didn't even know him. My knees shook under the weight of stares, some envious, some hateful, some already calculating how to take it away. The sheriff turned, eyes narrowing. "Miss Miller," he said slowly, "seems you just inherited more than you can carry." Samuel Cutter's eyes fluttered. He clutched my wrist with surprising strength, pulling me closer. His breath was ragged against my ear. "You said, no one's worthless." Then his grip went slack. The silence was unbearable behind me. The bell tolled again, not for the Sunday service this time, for death. And for me, the poor teacher suddenly bound to a man's fortune. And it passed. I didn't remember. The morning after Samuel Cutter died, I walked to the schoolhouse and found the door nailed shut. A notice was pinned to the wood with the sheriff's mark. Closed until further notice. My job, my only livelihood, was gone in an instant. By the time I reached Main Street, people had already chosen sides. Some nodded respectfully, muttering, "Fortune's yours now, Miss Miller." Others spit near my boots, eyes cold. They all wanted to know why a man like Cutter had named me as heir. Truth was, I didn't know myself. At the general store, Mrs. Harding hissed as I passed, "You think a word spoken as a child earns you land and cattle? Folks work a lifetime for less." She made sure everyone heard. Heads turned, whispers spread like fire in dry grass. Sheriff Carson found me soon after. He tipped his hat, but his eyes were sharp. "Need you to come with me, Miss Miller. There are papers to sign." Inside his office, the air was thick with cigar smoke. The desk was stacked with Cutter's ledgers, contracts, deeds, more wealth than I could count. A lawyer from the Capitol sat stiff in his black coat. He read aloud Cutter's last words, written by his own hand only weeks before, to the schoolteacher, Anna Miller. "I leave my fortune." She once spoke the truest words I ever heard, words I carried until my dying day. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, waiting. The sheriff studied me. My hands trembled in my lap. I remembered nothing of that day, only that as a child I often lingered near the corral, curious about horses, whispering things to men who looked twice my size. But before I could speak, the office door burst open. A tall man with Cutter's jawline strode in, boots striking the floor hard. "I'm his brother," he barked, "and she's a fraud." Gasps filled the room. My heart slammed against my ribs. The man threw a crumpled telegram on the desk. Samuel was no saint. He'd lost his senses. You can't hand his land to some poor girl who barely feeds herself. His eyes cut into me like a blade. The sheriff tried to calm him, but the brother wasn't finished. I'll fight this, in court, with men, with whatever it takes. She won't last a week out there." His words carried more than anger, they carried threat. I stepped outside after, legs weak, dust swirling in the wind. The town was waiting, watching from the porches. Children clung to their mothers. Old men spat tobacco into the dirt. And then, from across the street, a stone struck the ground near my feet. "She bewitched him," someone shouted. "She's nothing but a poor teacher." I turned quickly, breath catching. This wasn't inheritance. It was a sentence somewhere in the silence of the crowd. I swore I saw a pair of eyes softer than the rest, a ranch hand leaning on a fence post, staring at me with something almost like pity. But the sheriff's words echoed in my ears. "You just inherited more than you can carry." That night I sat alone in the schoolhouse yard, the one place no one cared to visit since the sheriff nailed the doors shut. The wind rattled the windows, and the smell of dust and horse sweat lingered in the air. My satchel was still by my feet, filled with notebooks I could no longer use. I had lost my students, my wages, my standing, and yet, by the law's word, I had gained more than anyone in town. It didn't feel like gain. It felt like a noose tightening. A knock startled me. Sheriff Carson stood in the doorway, hat low. He stepped inside, boots heavy on the floorboards. "Cutter's brother stirring men up," he said. "Claims you tricked Samuel somehow. Men are talking about running you out before the week is done." I swallowed hard. "And you? Do you believe him?" The sheriff's face didn't give much. "Doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is the papers are legal. But that won't stop bullets from flying." He looked at me for a long time. "Did you ever speak to Cutter before he died?" The memory pressed on me again. A hazy summer day, years ago. I was no more than 12, standing by the corral fence, watching men break horses. Samuel Cutter had been there, younger then, with eyes hard as stone. One of the men had fallen, kicked bloody by a Mustang, and the others laughed cruelly. I remembered shouting without thinking, "No one's worthless, not even him." It was a child's protest, quickly forgotten. Except he hadn't forgotten. I told the sheriff, voice quiet. He nodded slowly, as if the weight of it made sense somehow. "Maybe he saw himself in those words," he said. "But that won't mean a thing to folks who want your land." Before I could answer, the door slammed open. Cutter's brother filled the frame, flanked by two ranch hands carrying rifles. His shadow stretched long across the floorboards. "You've got till sundown tomorrow," he said coldly. "Sign the land over, or I'll take it by force." His eyes locked on me, daring me to answer. I stayed silent, heart hammering. The sheriff stepped forward, hand near his gun. "That's enough," he said. But the brother only sneered. "The law can't protect her forever, and neither can you." He spat on the floor and walked out, his men's boots thudding behind him. Silence fell heavy. I gripped the edge of my desk, my nails digging into the wood. Fear was choking me, but somewhere beneath it was a spark, faint, stubborn. "No one's worthless," I whispered to myself. The words that bound me to this fortune were the only shield I had left. The sheriff studied me, then finally said, "You've got a choice, Miss Miller. Run now or stand and claim what he gave you." And I knew by sunrise I would have to decide. The next morning the town square was louder than I had ever heard it. Wagons clattered, men argued, women whispered in tight circles. Word had spread fast. Cutter's brother was gathering men to drive me out. I tried to cross the street to the mercantile, but bodies shifted and closed in. "Teacher thinks she's a ranch queen now," someone muttered. Another voice snapped, "She'll bring nothing but trouble." My chest tightened. Then, from the edge of the crowd, the same ranch hand I had noticed before stepped forward. He was tall, quiet, his clothes worn from labor. He tipped his hat slightly. "Miss Miller," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Samuel Cutter trusted you. That's more than most of us ever earned." The murmurs faltered for a moment, but then a shout rose. Cutter's brother had arrived. He rode into the square with 4 armed men, dust rising beneath their horses. His eyes locked on me with the same fury as last night. "Last chance, teacher," he barked. "Sign the land, or watch it burn." The sheriff appeared at my side, his hand resting near his gun. "This is the law speaking," he called out. The deed is hers. Samuel Cutter's words are binding. The brother spat. Law means nothing without men to defend it. He raised his hand, and one of his riders fired a shot into the air. Horses panicked. Children screamed. The square erupted in chaos. I ducked behind a wagon, heart pounding in my ears. For a moment, I thought of running, leaving it all behind. The schoolhouse, the land, even the memory of Samuel Cutter's words. But then I saw the faces of my students in my mind, children who had nothing but the lessons I gave them. If I ran, what would I prove? That I was worthless after all. I forced myself to stand. My voice shook, but I made it carry. This land was given to me because I said no one is worthless, and I still believe it. You can threaten me, but you won't take that from me. The crowd went still. Some looked away, ashamed. Others stared, uncertain. The ranch hand's eyes met mine, steady, almost proud. Cutter's brother snarled, "Fine. If you want to hold what isn't yours, then you'll bleed for it." He kicked his horse forward, but before he could reach me, the sheriff fired into the dirt at the horse's hoofs. "Enough," he roared. "You'll face her in court, or you'll face me here." The standoff hung heavy, dust swirling in the silence. Finally, the brother yanked his reins, pulling back. "This ain't over," he spat. "Not by a long mile." He rode off, his men following close behind. I stood trembling, but upright. The town had seen me speak, seen me refuse to bow. Whether they believed me or not no longer mattered. For the first time, I felt like Samuel Cutter's words were more than an inheritance. They were a choice. The courthouse was just a one-room building with peeling paint and benches that creaked under the weight of curious townsfolk. Word had spread. The school teacher's fate and Samuel Cutter's fortune would be decided here. I sat at the front, hands folded tightly in my lap, while Cutter's brother paced like a caged wolf. His lawyer rattled off accusations, fraud, manipulation, witchcraft even. Every word was aimed to strip me of dignity. When it was my turn, the sheriff nodded for me to stand. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself up. The judge, a stern man with silver hair, leaned forward. "Miss Miller," he said, "tell this court why a man like Samuel Cutter would leave his estate to you." Silence gripped the room. My throat tightened. I remembered that summer day again, the horse, the laughter, my childish outburst. My voice wavered at first, then grew steady. "I was 12 years old," I said. "I saw a man thrown down in the dust, and others mocking him for it." I shouted, "No one's worthless, not even him." It was nothing more than a child's protest. But Samuel Cutter remembered. He lived with wealth, but maybe he carried something heavier, feeling like he was worthless himself. If my words gave him strength, then perhaps that's why he chose me. I can't explain more than that. Murmurs swept the benches, faces shifted, some doubtful, some softening. Cutter's brother slammed his fist on the table. "You expect us to believe a fortune rests on a child's foolish words." The judge raised a hand for silence. Then he opened a sealed envelope from Cutter's lawyer. Inside was a single page, written in Cutter's own hand. His voice lived in those words. "She once told me no one's worthless. When I believed her, I found a reason to live another day. I leave her my estate so she may teach others the same." The room fell still. Cutter's brother paled, his fury twisting to desperation. "That land belongs to blood," he shouted. But the judge struck his gavel. "The will is clear. The land, the herds, the estate all belong to Anna Miller." The decision echoed like a gunshot. The brother stormed out, his boots pounding the floorboards. I sat back down, breathless. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like a weight placed gently on my shoulders, heavy, but mine to carry. When I stepped outside, the townsfolk were waiting. For the first time, their eyes were not filled with scorn. Children tugged at their mothers' skirts, whispering, "She's the teacher." An old man touched his hat. Mrs. Harding even lowered her gaze. The ranch hand approached quietly. "Samuel Cutter saw something in you," he said. "Now the rest of us do, too." I looked out at the horizon, where the land stretched wide and endless. My land now. Cutter had left me more than cattle and dirt. He had left me proof that words, small, forgotten words, could change the course of a life. And as the sun dipped behind the hills, I felt it at last. I was no longer just the poor teacher. I was a woman reborn,